Okay, welcome back. Just give it 30 seconds here for YouTube to let everyone into the stream a second. Okay, great. So let's kick off then. This is the second video of the day. The first one was all about San Francisco and Xi and the homeless crisis and how they cleared everything in 24 hours and what Biden said and all that. So if you haven't watched it, you can watch the replay of that. We're now going to talk about some quite interesting developments there. Today, this video will be on central bank digital currencies. What has just happened, which is a little bit suspicious if you ask me, and including the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, doing a speech on central bank digital currencies, even though they've said they're nothing to do with these CBDCs. It's, each country is independent, has their own sovereign, all this sort of stuff, nothing to do with us. And well, wait till we get through the video. They've just issued a handbook on how to do CBDCs correctly and a keynote speech and all sorts of other things. Pretty weird. So let's go over to the shared screen then. Here we go. So this was a keynote that just took place yesterday at the Singapore FinTech Festival by Kristalina Georgieva, who is the CEO, notice the title, Chief Executive Officer of a for-profit organization. So here we go then. I come in the footsteps of my predecessor, Christine Lagarde, convicted criminal, excuse me, who 5 years ago gave a speech here encouraging policymakers to follow the winds of change and embark on a digital money voyage by exploring the use of central bank digital currencies or CBDCs and fintech. 5 years on, I'm here to provide an update on that voyage. I have four main messages. First, countries did set sail. Many are investigating CBDCs and are developing regulation to guide digital money developments. Again, CBDCs are central bank digital currencies. They're these new things that we've been talking about for a few years now. They're going to launch. They are a form of digital slavery on the people, or at least they are potentially that. Second, she says we have not yet reached land. Okay. Third, this is not the time to turn back. So she's already setting the stage for what she wants to achieve here. We've left port and are now on the high seas. This calls for courage and determination. Does it really? I thought this was just something that countries were looking into. It's, if they want to do it, it's up to them. But she's now leading by saying courage, determination. If anything, we need to raise another sail to pick up speed. Oh yeah, and why exactly is that? Is it because the Great Reset is not going as well as they hoped? Yes, I think that's the reason. Now, they have just released a virtual handbook. You can see it was just updated in November. So they've released this for central banks around the world, and you can even contact them. There's an email address here. You can even email them. I mean, this is the absurdity of it. They're nothing to do with it, nothing to do with us. But by the way, we've made a handbook to help you to launch them. Now, I'll tell you what's a bit weird about this whole thing. If you look at the AtlanticCouncil.org's tracker, it shows you who's actually launched. We've talked about Nigeria and the craziness of that. In fact, let me show you the latest update on Nigeria. The Naira scarcity worsens as banks limit withdrawals. ATMs run dry. You can see it here. ATMs have run dry. This is not going well at all in Nigeria. But let me tell you what I think is a bit weird about this. Here we go. If you look at this, which is an independent body, it's not like the Atlantic Council. This is an independent body. This has been launched, and this is from the Human Rights Council. You can see the logo at the top here. From the Human Rights Council, we're going to talk about them in a second and how they're fighting against it. Now, I want to show you, notice I've clicked launched here, so we can see it in red. Here's the same thing. we've got this, we've got Nigeria, but they have something very different. They have Russia, they have China, they have India, the BRICS nations. They have them already having launched their CBDC. Now, this is not what the official narrative says. It actually says that these are still in pilot. So this is very interesting indeed that the Human Rights Foundation is claiming that they have already officially launched. Now, the other one is Thailand and Cambodia. Thailand, one of my favorite countries. I like Cambodia as well. So that's interesting. I don't think it's going to work too well, though, in these countries because people just don't trust the government there. And I know that, or let me put that a different way. They are not going to trust their monies in the bank. They want to use cash. It's a very cash-heavy country. So I just can't see it. It's a bit like Nigeria, a very heavy cash-centered country. And we'll talk, if we have time over the next week, we'll talk about what's happened in Spain as well and the pushback that we are seeing there. But from speaking to friends in Thailand, they haven't noticed any difference at all with this launch of the CBDC. Now let's go on to the Human Rights Foundation. And by the way, if you're in any of those countries, please let me know if what's actually going on with your launch, if you've been affected in any way. But let's go on to the Human Rights Foundation. This is from Forbes. And they've now joined the fight against CBDCs. So this is going to get very interesting indeed. So how CBDCs will impact the civil liberties and human rights of people living under authoritarian regimes, which is exactly what I was talking about before. Sure, it's fine, I guess we could say, in theory, to launch a CBDC in a Western nation where, well, again, I don't even think it's fine in theory, but let's just pretend and go along with that. But look what happens if you do become an authoritarian regime, or you end up with someone who becomes a dictator. How on earth is that going to work? The people are going to be programmed with everything, and it even talks about it here. The Human Rights Foundation points out that 46% of the world's population lives under autocratic governments currently experimenting with CBDCs. That includes Belarus, China, Iran, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Thailand, and Turkey. CBDCs have not launched with much success. Even in autocratic countries, adoption and use rates have been dismal. Nigeria, for instance, restricted cash withdrawals to push citizens into using its CBDC. I said this as well a few months back when I did the video on it, resulting in citizens protesting cash shortages. Even after a year of restricting alternative payments, the Nigerian CBDC adoption increased to only 6% of the population. So I guess that's a good thing in some ways, if it was, because there's a few countries now whose CBDC has failed. They had to abandon it. If we look at the cancelled, one of them was Ecuador. Another one was Senegal. We also have some that are inactive. We have Iceland, Kuwait, Eritrea, North Korea. Not the best examples here, I know. Bermuda. But you can see that some of these are now inactive. Costa Rica, Uruguay. We don't know who's using it, and this is the reason why. The Bank of International Settlements, again, we're completely independent. We're nothing to do with any government, really. Well, this is what this man said. We don't know who's using a $100 bill today, and we don't know who's using a 1,000 peso bill today. The key difference with the CBDC is the central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also we will have the technology to enforce that. Now, the IMF's Deputy Managing Director, here we go, CEO Managing Director, what does that tell you? Bowley, CBDC can allow government agencies and private sector players to program targeted policy functions. They said it in black and white there. Targeted policy functions by programming a CBDC. Money, which it's not money, can be precisely targeted for what people can own and what people can do. They've told you, all these people that think, oh, you just, scaremongering and all this other stuff. No, they're telling you. They're speaking, it's coming out of their mouth, what they are planning to do with all of this. And they say it's because no one wants cash anymore. That's one of their main reasons. Well, yeah, when more than 1 in 8 UK bank branches is set to close this year, I mean, that is a staggering amount, 1 in 8. Even though they are lying again, UK cash use grows for the first time in a decade. So the cash use is actually growing. It's growing at a decent rate, not a huge rate, but branch numbers are also falling. More than 600 banks due to close by the end of 2023, leaving about 4,000 across the UK. But remember, that's on top of all the closures that happened 2020, 2021, 2022. You think how many branches there were before? Huge amounts of branches, absolutely enormous amount of branches. And look what we've got now. It's getting less and less and less. So they're just making all this stuff up as they go along. And I'm starting to question now this Atlantic Council and all the information they've been giving out, because it looks as though there are CBDCs that have been launched. Russia, China, India, and they're the BRICS countries. So I think it's very, very interesting. I'm going to definitely look into it. I've already read their IMF Handbook, which was not great, not useful. But look, they're telling us exactly, even though they're private companies, CEOs, managing director, they're private companies, they're telling everybody, they're telling us, they're making it public what they think of this whole situation. They are the ones dictating or advising governments, central banks, which in fact they're not even governments, they're central banks, many of which, or a lot of which, are owned by private shareholders. So what have you got? You've got government policy allowing private companies and private individuals to influence others, where there's obviously financial incentives involved, over the citizens' bank accounts and the citizens' ability to use money. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, but it is one of those things that people ask me, but Neil, what on earth can we even do about it? I'm just one person, I'm just one man, I'm just one lady. What on earth do we even do about it? And this is where the real challenge comes in. It's not as if you can protest and close your bank account, because they're closing everyone's bank accounts anyway. I was reading an article earlier today where they're talking about how the banks are closing people's accounts who are not profitable to the bank. Now, this shouldn't be allowed. I don't even know if that's legal. But then they say, oh, well, KYC, know your customer, and AML, anti-money laundering. We don't know how this person makes their money. Or they went over to China. Oh, they took a trip to Russia. Oh, this is a bit suspicious. We don't know if they're doing something dodgy with their money. I get emails every day. I'm seeing all sorts of strange things at the moment. Even business bank accounts being closed down, but personal bank accounts, credit cards being closed down. So it's not as if you can even protest it by closing your account, because you're limited. It's a monopoly, especially in the UK, and not as much in the US. You've got a lot of credit unions and things, but in the UK it's a monopoly. You've got the big banks, and they pretty much have this big group, and they control most of the banks. It's absolutely crazy. Just looking at the comments as we're going through here. Yeah, I mean, it's mad the way everything's going right now. It really is. All you can do is take care of yourself, take care of your family, and you really gotta think about these things. I was just writing an article today for the private community on Patreon, all about preparedness. And the more I was writing, the more I was realizing how difficult this is now. And it really is difficult, because I was thinking, okay, well, let's focus on Maslow hierarchy of needs, and let's look at the basics that every human needs, and let's look at the challenges we know that are coming in the future. Okay, well, if we look at those challenges, we then need to do this, we need to do that. And it was like getting so complicated, because I was like, okay, now we've got the Great Reset, we've got the Great Taking, we've got, it's mad. I don't think anyone has ever had a challenge as difficult as it is for, I don't mean it like challenge as in, if you think like the French Revolution or something like that. I don't mean it to that scale, or when in medieval times people, an army would sack a town or something like that. But I mean, we've never had a challenge like this in terms of the complexity of our financial system now, the complexity of the debt burdens that we have, like the US debt burden and the amount of debt they are creating all the time at a rapid rate is so crazy that it defies belief that they are even doing it. It really does. All right, I think I'm going to wrap up there, and then I'll see you tomorrow for the weekly walk and talk from Lisbon. Yes, I am in Lisbon, Portugal. So we'll do a walk and talk tomorrow, which will be very interesting in this area. So apart from that, I'll see you then. Take care. God bless you. God bless your family. I'll see you tomorrow.